Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast, powered by Kassoon Car. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by the very inspirational Akil Hunte. Akil is a multi-award winning law graduate and future trainee solicitor at CMS in London. He keeps himself very busy and is also the director of the New Black UK, founder of LinkedIn Skills for Lawyers, and blogger. Bit of a mouthful, so welcome, Akil.
Sounds good when you say it.
It's great to finally have you on the Legally Speaking podcast. But before we go through all your amazing works, we do have to start with our customary question on the podcast. So, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, how real do you rate the hit series Suits?
Well, that's an interesting question because there's so many parts to it that are not real at all and look real at the time. But from my perspective, I say 3 because I feel like when you look at the firm and you look at the offices, it looks quite illustrious, quite prestigious, etc. And that in itself is the case for some firms. But when you actually look at the content of what they're talking about and you're looking at all of the situations they get themselves involved in, it's just a bit ridiculous for me. So I would say 3 because I just don't think that it has a lot of content that really happens. But there's some stuff that looks quite real to the average everyday person.
Yeah, okay. No, I think fair enough. And you've justified your answer pretty clearly there.
So like a legal essay.
Of course. So we, of course, need to go through all of the great things that you're doing for the legal sector and what you're doing to give back and what you've got planned. But let's go back a few steps. Tell us a bit about you and tell us a bit more about your family background.
Sure, thank you. So, as you know, I'm Akil Hunte. I was born and raised here in London, so this is my hometown. I have origins to Jamaica, Grenada, and Guyana. I've never lived there. I wish I did at some point. It would be nice and lovely and tropical, but fortunately I have not. So I've lived here my whole life. As I grew up, I wasn't in the most privileged background, so for me, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. That's always something that has been my goal. But as I've gotten older, it was a lot harder for me because I didn't really have a lot of role models or a lot of people that was in law. I remember there were so many times where I was trying to find people who were lawyers and I'd go to some events and I would see the lawyers and I'd be like, I just can't see myself doing this. And for me, I had some friends that were interested in law, but when I said I actually want to go and see lawyers in action, they would tell me, nah, it's not really worth it. So for me, the whole journey to getting to this stage wasn't the easiest because I didn't have a lot of role models at the time who was in the industry, but I had a good family network, family support systems. They supported me and they made sure that I had enough education to be able to build a platform to allow me to get into the industry. And I went to university in 2015.
Did you always want to go to university? Tell us about your time there.
Sure. So university was always the plan.
Yeah.
I think my mum is a very educational focused person.
Yeah.
So she was always drumming into me that, education is the key and making sure I was going to library when I was younger. So for me, university was always the plan. And Notting Trent University, funnily enough, was a university that wasn't one that I initially thought was the main one I wanted to go to. But as soon as I went to the campus, I had a really good vibe from there. I met some of the lecturers who actually ended up giving me things when I left that I was like, wow. And they were so appreciative of the things that I did in the university that it was like, I met you on the open day and now you're being like this when I finish. And it shows the chronology and shows how authentic it actually was at the time. So I wanted to go to another university, but I didn't get the grade. So when I went to Nottingham Trent, I thought to myself, actually, you know what, I could take advantage of this because I've come there not having the best platform to build off in my perspective, but now I can hopefully make something that's exceptional. And I think, when I went to university, that was the main thing I thought was, let me be exceptional here and let me not be average student. Let me be an Oxford student and not a Nottingham Trent.
Good stuff. And so how many awards did you win at university? I think you broke a record, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, for sure. So if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 7. I won 2 negotiation competitions. I won a Dean's Award twice and I won 3 awards from the student union, and that's not including the scholarship. So I believe it was 7 awards and a scholarship. However, it was all in different spaces of time, so it wasn't in one time.
And you were, again, just tell us a bit more. You're the first student, as you rightly say, to receive the Dean's Award for outstanding contribution for 2 consecutive years, right?
Yes. That's true. Yeah, that was weird. I remember when I got told about it, I was like, they must have made a mistake because I won this last year.
Yeah.
And then you actually got it. And then I did the graduation speech for my cohort at the time. So when I did the graduation speech, I was like, wow, like they've actually given me this award twice. The dean has said I like this guy twice. That's quite an achievement.
Well, good for you. And we will talk about the most current, the New Black UK. But before that, when you're at university, why did you want to create the university society called the New Black NTSU?
For sure. So that was an interesting story, and I'll take you back to the beginning. So I initially planned to do this in my first year, and you can find articles about it. I literally said from my first year, there will be the society. However, the reason I thought about doing the society, because I felt like the word black was not really used in a very positive sense, both in how the media presented it, how culturally it's being very stigmatized. And I didn't really like that because people associate black with death, negativity, funerals, and I just thought, wow, like, so when people call me black, it's what people think about me. So for me, it was like, I want to make black like a word that people can come together and be inspired to be able to achieve and succeed and overcome the negative ideas or misrepresentations that are put towards themselves or they put towards themselves in their development. So for me, I want to make the New Black that hub. But it didn't start then, because after my first year, it was quite challenging because, as you mentioned, some things were going quite well. And I was also a director of the student union at the time. So I was like student trustee of the student union, and I had just got a scholarship. So for me, it was quite challenging to be able to navigate that. But what I found out after time was that, when I started again in my end of my second year, I felt like, this is something that is more important than just me. It's more important than just, getting an award, or more important than just being a student that's looked at well by others. For me, it was like, I need to be able to bring people together and help them to succeed and develop and help to motivate them. And for me, that's why I started again. I got a bigger team. I got people that want to support us from behind the scenes. And we literally just started to push it out. And I think when we started, it was a bit like on edge because they already knew that I didn't do this before.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to do it again. So it's like, would he ditch us again? But it wasn't like that. So when we got together, we did really good events. We got an event where we collaborated with like very influential people that have like a national reputation and organizations that worked in like very prestigious roles, both in journalism and other industries. So for me, it was like, the whole point of it was to bring people together and think differently about how they're trying to develop in society and overcome the ideas that are put forward to them.
Yeah, and really well said. Well said. So I think you mentioned from a young age you wanted to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. Why law? There's so many other great professions out there. Why was that your calling at such a young age?
That's interesting because I'd say there's 3 reasons. First reason is I could talk the roof off. So for me, if I could talk the roof off, and as a lawyer, you have to talk the roof off, I thought anyway at the time. So I thought that was my first key skill. Yeah. Second key skill was I was analytical. So when I was younger, my mum always used to tell me, Akil, you're always analytical. You need to start analysing everything. And for me, it was like, if I'm going to be able to do something, I have to use my skills. And I was very analytical. So I thought, you know what? I like to talk. I'm very analytical. So being a lawyer might be able to work. And the third reason was I was just crazily ambitious from a very young age. So even though I didn't know any lawyers and I didn't have anyone around me literally holding me into this industry, it was just like, well, being a lawyer is regarded as most academically, one of the most like prestigious roles in this country. But I also like to help people. So if I'm able to coalesce both of those things, I will be able to build something that I never thought I could when I look around me and I see what everyone else is doing. So for me, I feel like it was those key things, which was that I was very ambitious, I was very analytical, and I just like to speak.
And what really inspires me about your journey as well is, like you said, where you started sort of things, you've not come from this overly privileged background and you've still kind of kept into being very switched on and very looking at things as matter of fact. And I like the fact that you've also stayed true to your values and the fact that you still want to give back, right? And that's really, really great. So in terms of one of those things, there's so many juniors out there that are really struggling to get training contracts, right? So for you, how did you secure your future training contract with your sort of soon-to-be firm, and how did you handle rejections along the way?
That was so interesting you asked that question because that whole process was a hard one. Yeah. And for me, I was applying for my first year because here's me thinking that I'm this kid in Oxford, that Nottingham-on-Trent, right, who is exceptional. I was trying my best to apply for vacation schemes in my first year, and I would obviously get rejected because my A-level grades wasn't absolutely the best, and I didn't have a lot of legal work experience. I don't think I actually had any at the time. So for me, it was from my first year. But going through that process over 3 to 4 years was one of the hardest things that I've done, but also the most rewarding, because I say for youngsters coming in, I say there's 3 things you have to understand in regards to the process and rejections. The first thing is you have to understand, like, not every firm is for you. And I say that because there's hundreds of firms in the industry, and not every single firm is going to be tailored towards your development. And if you're trying to train at somewhere where you're trying to be a lawyer that was not only going to qualify, but able to go into areas that are going to enrich your life, you need to be able to be in a place to provide that. So you have to find a firm that's for you, the first thing. Second thing, I felt like when I was going through the process was that I recognized that I had to make the process work for me and not just work for the process. And when I say that, I mean, don't just go through cold applications all day and just hope that someone recognizes your innate, like, talent for being a lawyer. It's not going to happen. I'd say you have to be able to build yourself in a way that allows you to go through the process in the way that makes you feel comfortable. And I think I found that through going through the New Black Society, through doing public speaking, through negotiating, through being a director of the student union, these things I felt like wasn't by force. It wasn't something that I did just to get a training contract. It was something I genuinely enjoyed and something that I still help support now. Like, I was a judge on a negotiation competition last year, and like I saw kids coming in trying to negotiate. I wouldn't say kids, someone older than me actually, but it was the whole idea that I love negotiation and now I just love to negotiate. So for me, it was just like, it was something that I felt passionate about, something that I felt interested in. So that's the second thing. Make the process work for you. And the final thing is to understand that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I don't say that as I'm the only person who said that. I believe there's a musician called Nipsey Hussle. He had a clothing line called Marathon Continues. And for me, that resonates with me because I understand that in this whole process, you have to have a lot of stamina to be able to get there. And if you don't have the stamina, you won't get through. So even the most exceptional people that I met in university, they never got accepted in their first place. They have got some rejections along the way, and that's fine. But if you understand that when you go through this process, you have to go through these rejections. Like, I got rejected multiple times at interview. So for me, it was like, that's a bit of a confidence denter because you think, oh, they like me because they see me, right? And it's actually the opposite. They like my application, but in person, it wasn't as easy. So for me, it was like, you have to make sure you know that when you go through that process, not everyone is going to get along with you. Not everyone's going to be able to contribute to your vision. So you have to be able to just navigate that in the best way for you. So I see those 3 things.
Great stuff. And again, in terms of that giving back and keeping busy, you've also done some recent charity work. And correct me if I'm wrong, you've been out in Tanzania recently. Tell us about your time there and what you were doing.
That was cool. I was there from October till December. For I think 74 days. So it wasn't a short period of time. And that whole program was based on a charity called Voluntary Services Overseas. Their aim was to inspire communities overseas and hope to alleviate poverty. So I went to Tanzania with a group of people from the UK, lovely people. We got along so well. And what we did was we had to create projects over there to help to spearhead the economic development in the region. So it was creating workshops for the youth. I was doing workshops on CVs, employability skills, networking, etc. And then we also had to help SMEs build their businesses through their marketing plans and such. So it was a real crash course in I think it's not NGO work, but just more sustainable development and ensuring that you can look at other countries and see, what are they doing right, the first thing, and then think, what can they do to improve? Because when you go over to places like that and you see the youth over there, you recognize these guys are probably smarter than us. The way that they approach a lot of problems in their lives or approach, development in their classrooms. So these kids are smart and they are mature to an extent, of course, as you can be as you're a youth. So they took a lot of our lessons and they showed us so much love and so much appreciation for those lessons that I feel like I learned a lot from that in itself. So I'd say that experience was really good for me because it allowed me to understand that, there's other regions in the world that, don't have as much privilege as us in terms of the economic benefits, but they have so much potential to do so well if they have the resources to do that. And I think that was one of the key lessons I got from that.
Great, and what a fantastic experience. So it's somewhere I haven't been, but I think hearing that is something I would love to do myself.
You have to know Swahili if you go there.
Yeah, I'm on that. So outside of the law, you do have so many passions and interests, which we've touched on lightly, but one of those, of course, is the New Black UK. So for people listening in who may not be so aware, what is the New Black UK and why did you want to set it all up?
For sure, for sure. So that's all based on the concept I described earlier in terms of black being a word that I believe have been stigmatized in society and not presented in the way that it should be. And for me, the New Black UK, and for us as a team as well, because there's a team behind us and they're doing an incredible job pushing this forward. We're creating a not-for-profit social enterprise that aims to inspire and motivate young people from less privileged and more marginalized communities between 16 and 25, particularly who are aspiring professionals and creatives, to succeed against adversity in their personal professional development. And we aim to provide that in multiple ways. So the first way is to make our events, conferences and workshops in order to mobilize and inspire young people in our target audience to really achieve their goals. Second way, to create media content that allows young people in our target audience to really engage with what we're trying to achieve, but also see the authenticness behind us, because we're not just a corporation who just creates stuff just for the sake of it. We put as much value as we can into making the people behind the camera seem like they are the people, that, they are learning from and they are inspired by in their respective industries. And finally, in terms of the core part of the business, we're trying to create programs and initiatives in partnership with corporations, institutions, organizations in order to help support and mobilize young people in our target audience who would like that development. And aside from that, aiming to consult organizations, institutions, and corporations in order to improve their D&I strategies, wide asset participation, as well as the corporate social responsibility schemes to enable them to understand what our target audience wants to achieve going into these environments and allow them to flourish in that environment, as well as collaborate with like-minded organizations to achieve our similar goals respectively. So that's kind of the overview of us. And at the moment, we're just doing a lot of workshops. So there's a workshop literally tomorrow. I'll be going to Nottingham. At the time, it won't be tomorrow when this comes out, but it's tomorrow. And we've got more workshops to come over this year. So it's quite amazing to see when you work with a team of incredible people, some have come from the society, and some of them, I've known for years, like they've just helped to build this and helped to, really create like something that I think could hopefully go global.
So, Akil, what's the best part of working with the team at the New Black UK?
Wow, there's so many parts. I'd say there's three things. The first thing is that everyone is so different from me, yet they're so exceptional what they do. For example, on the team, we've got Giosuè, he's the technical director. We've got Mike, he's the branding and graphics officer. We've got Charlene, she's the marketing director. And we've got Dee, who helps out when she can behind the scenes. And for me, it's just like everyone around me there is just so different from me that whenever I pose ideas, it just gets elevated to another level. And I feel like not everyone can see that when they're looking at us from the outside. They might just see me talking, but they don't know that, behind the scenes, there's marketing going on. Behind the scenes, there's all this branding and design and consultations, and, there's technical side that's ensuring that, that in the future we're able to scale what we're doing on another level. So that's the first thing, the skill set. Second thing is the personalities, because I've known these guys for so long, and every time I'm talking with them and I'm working with them, building with them, it's just a great vibe. And, whenever we come together and we talk about things, it's just a crazy energy, and I love it. So I feel like their personalities just really complement mine, and they really help us to really gel better as a team. And I feel that's so important in terms of the team dynamics. And finally, I just say that, like, they're also like down to push the vision alongside me, because one of them was president of the society, the other one was vice president of the society in uni, and the other one was supporting the society before it was even a society. So they all know what I wanted to achieve with this, and they all want to add something to that. But they're not just working for me, they're working with me, because they're working with me to push this vision to another level. So it's just like we're all like in our own separate categories, sharing our own separate expertise and building something incredible. So I see those are the best things.
Great stuff. And do you know what inspired and why I was so fascinated in your journey, and why I was so keen to give you this platform and opportunity? Because I think your sheer passion and for what you're trying to do, and what the meaning behind this is, like you say, it's so real.
It is real.
And I think we're really trying to tap into helping and supporting people and everything you're doing. So it really is commendable. So, well done. And I've never met someone who's, so thirsty and hungry and manages so many things. So keep doing all of that, most definitely. But in terms of getting it, so how can people join or be part of the New Black UK? And you've talked about a lot of the benefits. So, if there's any more you want to list, but talk to people maybe listening and how they can get involved.
For sure, thank you for that. So, for us, we're active on social media.
Yep.
So you can find us on the New Black UK, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. You can find us at the New Black UK as one word on Instagram, and on Twitter. At the moment, LinkedIn and Instagram are our biggest following, so we're getting quite a lot of traction on there. In terms of added benefits and joining us. So at the moment, we're still in our building phase, so we're still trying to build up our structure, our governance, our procedures, all of that. So for us, like, we're really looking to take it to a next level. So essentially, if anyone just wants to support us, they can just drop us a message and say, how they could, add value to what we're trying to achieve. Because ultimately, for us, it's just like, when we're working together to achieve the vision as a team, we recognize you can't do it by yourself. So I guess if people just want to, spread the word of us, let university know about us, let corporations know about what we're trying to achieve, I think that'll just be the most important thing, because, we know what our values are, we know what we stand for, and we know what our principles are. I guess now we just need to be able to build that platform to create that global exposure, which I think will happen.
Yeah. And look, nothing is straightforward in this world. And, if you're going to make something a success, you can have a lot of challenges, you can have a lot of failures along the way, and you're going to learn a lot. But what do you think are some of the main challenges you're going to face with the New Black? And, what do you kind of think, what's it going to look like?
For sure, that's an interesting question, because ever since I thought of this concept, there has been challenges along the way.
Yeah.
And some of the challenges has mainly related to my confidence in what I can achieve.
Yeah.
So I'd say the first thing is challenge is the self-confidence. Because when you're trying to build anything that is trying to make a global impact, you have to understand that, by trying to build this impact, you're going to have to be impactful in yourself. So it all comes from yourself, and I think that's the biggest challenge I think our face is ensuring that every day and and every year or every month I'm able to consistently feel like I can create the impact with this, because it's not easy when you're starting something and people kind of know what it's about, but you haven't told it in a way that can feed into a sort of narrative that people can understand. So people are trying to find out what it is, but they can't. But what I'm trying to say is, it's challenging when you're trying to build something that is unique and different, because people need to understand the uniqueness and how it benefits them. And sometimes I feel like we don't add as much value as we can, and I'm really trying to provide that value over the next few years. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, sometimes when you're trying to creating issues like this in industries which can be quite privileged, which can be, quite, singular-minded in a way, it's difficult to be able to change perspectives in that industry, which is why we actually made a whole video series called Changing Perspectives, because we felt like if we don't change perspectives, then no one's really going to understand what we're trying to achieve, because the whole point of the New Black is to inspire you to overcome the ways that you think about things. And if people are looking at us and they're not overcoming the way they think about us, then they're not able to work with us. So I think, just trying to navigate and, inspire young people going into industries where they're underrepresented, they may not have as much privilege as others, but also, they may come from communities where they are stigmatized on a lot of platforms. And I think being able to provide them with an infrastructure to support that is by no means an easy feat. So I think that in itself will be challenging to do. And finally, I think the main challenge that we could face is just being consistent, because my team are very busy and they have a lot of things doing at the moment, and we're all working towards one vision, and we're all trying to build something that outlasts us. So for us to achieve that, we have to be consistent, and I think it's not easy to be consistent when you've got so many pressures as young people, some from the Black community, some from the working class white community, some from the middle class white community, some from the Asian community, people who believe in New Black and what we're trying to achieve. It's challenging to be able to bring us all on one front. So I feel like that will be a challenge, but it'll definitely be something that we can overcome.
Yeah, good for you. And in terms of later this year then, or for some things maybe in the short term with regards to events, what have you got planned, or what's bubbling away that you can kind of give some snippets on?
For sure. So we actually do have some things coming up in the future. I think by the time this is released, it will be out. So we have a new video series that's due to come out. It'll be a social media video series. I can't disclose the contents yet, but once it is out there in the public domain, then everyone should hopefully know about it. But the aim of the series is able to motivate, inspire young people, as our core ethos is, to really overcome the challenges they face in a day-to-day. And we're aiming to release that pretty soon. So hopefully by the time this comes out, it'll be available. And people will know about it. Also, in terms of events, so we're currently doing workshops with a lot of universities, societies at the moment. So we do have some more planned in the near future. Once they're confirmed, hopefully, we can talk a lot more about that. However, we have that in the pipeline. So for us, it's really like trying to move forward in our core strategy of, engaging our target audience and benefiting them as much as we can, and hopefully in the future be able to collaborate with corporations, organizations, institutions in order to, build this platform on a wider level to enable us to be able to make the impact that we want to make, hopefully on a large scale. So for us, like, that's the main things that we've got in the pipeline, hopefully much more soon.
Good stuff. And then talking more about law firms then, what can they do to increase the pull towards people maybe going to the legal sector, candidates who have probably come from more of an underrepresented or marginalised communities? What can be done?
That's interesting. There's a lot to that question because it boils down to a few factors. Are people willing to do what's done? Do people who can benefit, will they appreciate that benefit once it is done? And finally, once it is done, people appreciate that benefit. Will it make the impact that people see? So I think to even answer those questions itself is a very challenging thing and not something that I can answer. But I think in terms of what can be done, I feel like first and first, just make a warm and welcoming environment for everyone, no matter where they're from. Because I feel like sometimes you go into an environment and, you might say, oh, one of my favorite musicians is a musician called Jay Huss, and for me, I might say I like Jay Huss and like Jay who, and Jay Huss, and it's like it's like no Jay Huss, and if I'm trying to explain that, someone might look at me and be very uncomfortable with the fact that I like a Black British artist who talks about things that are very specific to his community. So for me, it's like first and foremost, make people comfortable with who they are and what they like, and don't feel like they have to be outcasted as a result of that. Second thing is to be able to understand that in this industry we go into, when people are socializing, I think this is a key part of it. Like, just make sure people can feel comfortable. So like people can feel like, they can, don't have to drink if they don't want to, can be able to engage in other activities that are just more inclusive. So you don't have to create a culture where people don't feel like they can just be themselves. Yeah. Because when you say to someone, bring your whole self to work, and your whole self is Muslim, then if you can't drink, and you're saying part of bringing yourself to work is to drink, then obviously you can't drink if that's the case. And me not being a Muslim myself, I can empathize with the fact that if someone has that, that not that requirement, if they have that belief, then you have to respect that and make an environment that hopefully caters more towards the whole environment as opposed to just a few individuals. So I think that needs to be done, and I think those are the main things, to be honest. Yeah. But I feel like there's a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah, and there's some good insights there. So thanks for sharing that. And some of the other things, moving into more of the sort of current world then, and a lot of people that we've had on the Legally Speaking podcast has been through LinkedIn, and I know that's a big platform that you mentioned as well. You're using. So I want you to tell people more about your personalized coaching program called LinkedIn Skills for Lawyers. Do you want to sort of tell us more about that?
For sure. So that program essentially was birthed off the fact that I've been using LinkedIn for 3 to 4 years consistently. Yeah. I was posting motivational Mondays. I was posting...
Which are amazing, by the way. I love your ones. Some of those are amazing.
Thank you so much. And they've all come from like the heart. It's not anything that I've like just made just for the sake of making it. I feel like a lot of the time I make it just through off the struggles and challenges I used to face or I'm currently facing. But I feel like I've been doing that for years now. And as I'm seeing more people on the platform reach out to me, or I'm seeing more people on the platform trying to get into the legal industry, I recognize that not a lot of people feel like, they can use LinkedIn for their benefit, or they're using LinkedIn for their benefit, but they're not really using it in the optimum way. And I'm trying to create a platform to help that. So LinkedIn Skills for Lawyers is a program that's designed to help aspiring and current lawyers improve, their presence on the LinkedIn platform by providing them the skills and tools to be able to achieve that. So in order to do that, I create like a personalized structure that helps them over a few weeks, whereby we give them a structured support. I say we, it means me talking to them and giving them, the kind of the strategy to be able to overcome what they're trying to achieve, to be able to be successful and hopefully get into the industry or be more well known in the industry for the person that they are. So that's the main crux of the program, and that's what we're doing with it.
Yeah. And, this thing we've talked about a lot over the themes of the season 1 and season 2 is around personal branding and social media. So, how important do you think that is for your current and future lawyers in the 21st century?
For sure. So a personal brand is probably one of the most important things you can have, especially if you're not from a community where you're very well represented. And I would say I fall within that category. So I would say that the first thing that's important about building a personal brand is that if no one knows who you are, then no one's going to be able to want to bring you into the firm.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to at least stand for something other than the fact you're just a student. I feel like that's the main thing. The second thing is that building a personal brand allows you to actually have a conversation starter before you even enter a room. So I feel one thing I felt I've done well in the past few years is I've built up a reputation for things that I truly believe and care about. So if someone talks to me, they talk to me about things I truly believe and care about, and it means the conversation is a lot easier. So I think that's the second thing. It just allows you to be more authentic and allows you to build relationships in a way that works for you. And especially when you go into an industry, whereby it's not easy to get a training contract. I think out of the thousands that apply, only hundreds get it. So it's a very small margin. So you have to be able to stand out in some way.
Using AI as a part of that personal brand will be very critical for a lot of the aspiring lawyers of today. And I say that because there's a lot of current topics that's happening right now in the legal industry, such as, training contracts being created in order to, feed off the technological revolution that's occurring. And I feel like if people are able to showcase that they understand, how cryptocurrencies work, they understand, how machine learning works, they show how artificial intelligence works in a document review process, or in terms of how to, even potentially make their own legal tech startups as a sort of prototype project.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? But if they can incorporate that within what they're trying to, achieve in university and beyond, they will be able to go into an interview and maybe talk to someone who's quite senior but is really in charge of that, and be able to build an authentic relationship. So I think that's very important in terms of building a personal brand and stuff, and that aspiring lawyers can use AI to be able to boost that.
Yeah, no, well said. And in terms of some of the other things that you've done or as part of your background, which are really interesting, you're also a volunteer for the big warm-up.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about that and what that involves?
Those guys are great, man. I'm actually going there today, funnily enough.
Yeah.
I'm going there tonight. But these guys are incredible. So what they do is they serve food and hot drinks to the homeless every Thursday night from 8 o'clock, and they do it in a specified place that's around the Westminster area. And the reason they do it is because they recognise that when you're serving food like through shelters and whatnot, sometimes homeless people don't want to come into a shelter. They just want to stay where they are and just want to stay. So they go over to where the people are and they provide them with the food and the hot drinks to be able to help them sustain themselves in the evening that they're finding it hard. So I volunteer as much as I can with them. I support their vision because, they just want to really make an impact and they just want to do things for the community whereby, it's quite disparate in terms of, the wealth there and in terms of the poverty there. And I feel I can connect with that and I can support that because ultimately they're trying to support, homeless in a part of London where there should not be homelessness.
Yeah.
When you look at the fact that that's the home of the government.
Yeah.
So I think, their mission is very powerful and one that I can really identify with.
And from that to, taking you back to 2019 when you were the team lead for the Grenfell Kids Camp, right?
For sure.
Do you want to tell us about that experience?
Mm-hmm. That was a good experience for me. One that I feel like I was so happy to do because that was just when I came back from Tanzania from the 2.5 months volunteering. And for me, Grenfell holds a special place in my heart because I live very close to there and I actually saw the incident at the time it happened. So for me, it was very hard to be able to, grapple with those emotions of knowing that I was affected by this tragedy, but at the same time knowing that I've got to support the community that have also been affected, that are a lot younger and are more susceptible to challenges as they grow up. So just to give you context, that camp was over a few days in the Christmas time, run by a brilliant woman called Batsiba and her team, like Ismahan. And they were just doing an incredible job, alongside their day-to-day life, getting this program together, getting the kids, all the lunches throughout the whole few days. They took them on trips to be able to support them. And I feel like that whole experience was so powerful for me because I met so many like-minded people. I actually saw one of them just the other day walk into a meeting and like, you know, we just talked as if things had never changed. So for me, it was like a really powerful experience because it was just even one step for me thinking about how can I support my community who was very, very, very much affected by that situation.
Just before we sort of wrap up, there is quite a lot of public speaking you do and public speaking initiatives. So tell us a bit more about that.
So I do public speaking quite regularly, and as I said, when I was younger, I was quite a talker. So for me, it wasn't anything that I felt like was very out of my depth. So in terms of public speaking, some that I have done in the past, for example, I was just recently at an incredible founders launch of a social enterprise called Renee Kapuku, and she launched a social enterprise called the Flyover Network. I was speaking on that just last month. You know, did an incredible job, and I really enjoyed, you know, that. A lot of the public speaking I do right now is through the New Black UK because you know that's a priority for me this year, and I really want to help push that forward and really use that as a platform to make the impact that I really want to make. But in terms of other public speaking engagements, I can't remember right now. Yeah,
there's loads. People who follow you on social media can keep up to date with it. It's just this guy just keeps himself unbelievably busy. So and on that then. What do you do for downtime? You know, what does the Akil do when it's kind of that? Even Saturdays you don't sit still. But what are you trying to do for downtime?
Downtime. Do you see? Downtime for me is I get an evening off and I just watch a movie. Yeah. So for me, downtime is never like a day. It's like increments of my time. So if I find a free evening where I've done my work, I just switch off. I listen to a lot of music, so I love music specifically like UK rap, R&B, you know, from all parts of the world. I love a bit of jazz, a little bit of soul. I'm quite diversified in how I like to listen to music. So I like to just chill out and just mellow with that. But yeah, I don't get a lot of those days much anymore unless I'm seeing family or I'm seeing my close friends. I don't really get a lot of downtime, but I try to build in rest throughout the day now because I recognize that if you don't build rest in, it can really be your biggest detriment. So for me, I'm just trying to actively work towards that and hopefully, you know, just not burn out. That's essentially my downtime. Don't burn out.
Good tip. That's a good tip. So listen, Akil, thanks an absolute million. You know, I think everything you're doing personally, I think everything you and your team are doing for the New Black UK, I do want to continue to wish you all the very best of luck with that. Also with all of your legal studies, your future initiatives, and, you know, I'm sure everything is just going to continue to go from strength to strength. So it's been a real pleasure sharing the mics with you today. No doubt we'll be hearing and seeing you in the future as well. But from my side, it's been truly inspirational and very gripping. I'm sure our listeners have loved every minute of it. Over and out.
Thank you.